welcome you to the class that is entitled Integrative Theology. And I want to deal with today from Lecture 4 of Class 3. Lecture 4 is the form of pneumatics. The first supplemental lecture will be substantial essence. And I am your host, Bishop Dr. Derek A. Reeves. Let's dive right into our lesson today. When we speak of form, the New Testament is very clear as it relates to the term metamorpho. And metamorpho then deals with the externalization of all that a person is. The external or the form is typically in the Old Testament considered to be the bait or the house or the tent where something dwells. And so the physiology then is the containment. The form, once visible or once exposed or manifested, becomes that evidence that something is existing. The form is simply the externalization or the manifestation of the reality of the thing that's there. And so when we speak of the form and we speak of pneumatic forms, we're speaking of particularly the nature of a spiritual being. The nature of a spiritual being. And this is very important because it gives to us the fundamental reality and state of existence of that being. And literally, it can also begin to speak of the functionality. Now, the Bible lets us know that the term spirit or pneuma, and this is where we describe these beings as pneumatics. And so the term pneumatic is basically an adjective describing a spiritual entity. And so a spirit is spiritual. But when we look in the Old Testament terminology is ruah or ruach. And the term literally means breath, a breeze of air, or a breath of air, or a current of air. And in many cases, it can deal with the vital principle that causes the mind to function. It can deal with the vital principle of thinking, emotivizing, or feeling, or responding to things. And so the spirit can literally be the reaction. How do we react? In what type of response? In what type of dimensional response? And when I speak of dimensional response, I'm speaking of with ardor. What degree of passion? What degree of anger? What degree of love or compassion? And so spirit then, the breath. And in so many cases, it also specifically when we deal with pneuma in the New Testament, and these two words to gain a greater understanding of what spiritual context is, then we would have to begin to examine what it means to be a mind. Because the complexity of the term in the New Testament, pneuma, breath, a blast of air, it can be the vital principle that causes life to flow through the body and continue in the body. But it also can deal with the mind of an individual, the thinking apparatus, the emotive apparatus, and the very volitional apparatus. And so what then is the form, the substantial essence of a spirit? And to go back to this, we have to go back to the Old Testament, ruach. Jeff Boehner, I believe, his name is Jeff, but Boehner, who does the ancient Hebrew lexicon of the Bible, when he spells out the term ruah or ruach in the Old Testament using the ancient Hebrew pictograms, there are two terminologies or two pictograms that are used there. One speaks of the head of a man, And the head of a man speaks of Rosh, or speaks of what we call the leader, the head, the controller, the provider. The next is also a side of a wall or a side of a tent. And so it speaks of a wall. And so when he puts these two together, he brings them into the continuity of meaning someone or the head who goes outside of the tent or the house. And so it indicates then possibly that a spiritual entity is one, as Jesus said, they that are of the Spirit. It says, the Spirit goeth where it listeth, and no man can tell where it comes or goes. And so spirits then, pneumatics, it appears that their substantial reality is very capable of shifting and changing. It also reveals that they have the complex ability of being greater than the dimensions of the created universe. And so these spiritual entities then can travel at will. They can traverse uniquely different dimensions by virtue of their thinking. We understand that angels, pneumatics, or ruachians, whatever you want to call them, that they have the capacity of moving through the three dimensions of the physical universe. They don't have to go through doors, but they can step into the dimension of the three dimension and function in greater aspects than what humans can. And so the form of pneumatics is basically a spiritual aspect that is possibly a minciological reality of thought that is monadic, that is individualized, because all angels don't have the same name. They don't have the same characteristic as far as who they are. Their names determine their personalities and their personages. And so these angels then are winds. They are wind-like beings that can disperse themselves and move at will by thought. These individuals also have a form that enables them to transition and to take shape. When they come in the form of humans, temporarily, because the term form designates nature, they temporarily take on the form or the nature of the physical, and therefore they can interact with men and women and the physical world while they're in that form. They themselves, the reason why I said interact is because they can touch a human can touch them. This is evidenced by how angels led individuals, pulled them by the hand, is evidenced by Jacob wrestling with an angel. It's evidenced by angels eating with Abraham. But when they are in their spiritual form, that form is extra dimensional. Humans can't see them, can't interact with them, because in most cases, they don't even know they're there. And so the form or the substantial essence of a spirit then, the substance is monadic, one thing. The essence is what we would fundamentally call functional essence. And so that functional essence is their power of thought, their capacity to think, to do, to assume forms. And so what a spirit is, we just know it is extra dimensional essence or substantial reality that is above the physical reality of man. But this essence has the capacity to function in intellect, emotion, and volition. I don't want to go any further because it's going to tie in a lot of speculative theology that we haven't prepared for. And so I'm going to stop right here, and I pray that you've gotten something out of this. This is Integrative Theology, the first supplemental lecture to lecture number 4. I am your host, Bishop Dr. Derek A. Reeves, and until next time, God bless you.